morning, everyone. Welcome to a short video introducing a book edited by Noemi Levy and Jorge Bustamante and myself called Capital Movements and Corporation Dominance in Latin America, Reduced Growth and Increased Instability. The main importance of this book is that it addresses the structural problems of Latin American countries in the context of globalized capital movements and its effect over the financial and non financial institutions. The book contains analyses from key Latin American scholars that show the effects of capital movements on developing countries from a heterodox point of view, and some of the contributing authors are Bruno Bonizzi, Pablo Bortz, Gary Dimsky, Anina Kaltenbrunner, Esteban Perez Candente, Jan Toporowski, among others, and of course, both of you. The book shows that capital movements have had negative effects on the economic performance in the region, mainly because the benefits of financial globalization has been to non-financial and financial against welfare of the working class. This has deepened the structural problems of the region, like deindustrialization and reprimarization, with increased debt, lower growth, and increasing external financial dependency. Welcome both to Noemi and Jorge. And my first question to both of you is, why this book? Why now?
Shall I start?
Yeah.
Oh, please.
Thank you very much for this interview to let people know about our book. And referring to your question, why now? I think the global crisis that hit developed countries in 2008 has not been resolved, and more importantly, it has unleashed an increase in income inequality. And in this sense, there is a bigger problem in emerging and especially Latin American country that from the beginning is much more unequal than developing economies. So if you now look what's going on in the light of the COVID crisis, the problems are worse in our region since there are no tools to confront the pandemic. There are no, there are very limited. There is a very limited space on how to confront the crisis. In this sense, it is important to discuss what's going on with international capital mobility, big corporation, and financial markets in terms of what to do in the future. I will leave it till now.
Let me pursue with this one question. Much of what you've said could equally apply to many developed countries. The limited tools of policy, both fiscal and monetary. Um, to what degree is the problem made worse by political considerations in Latin America? I'm thinking about Brazil and the election of the right wing government, and other countries. What role does the politics play in this context?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I suppose the political issue is extremely important. You referred to Brazil. I will add Chile. I will add Colombia. I will add Argentina. I will add Peru. And let's add Mexico also. Yeah? We are confronting a political arena that it's not anymore viable. In Chile, because of the pension funds, there was a social uprising. The COVID emergency couldn't stop it, and they managed to make a very interesting movement attempts to change the constitution left by the dictatorship. Peru, it's amazing now. The confrontation between what they call the very left wing candidate and the daughter of Fujimori. Colombia is out in the streets screaming for more social equality. In this term, we have a very interesting chapter of two Colombian professors explaining what has happened with capital mobility and capital movement in Colombia. Peru is another impressive example. We have another chapter in this sense. And
And how about your native country of Chile?
well, Chile has a social uprising. It has the problem with Chile is that the dictator left the power without leaving
Yeah.
leaving the structure of the dictatorship. Even when social democrat or people from the left that were from the left wing movement ran the country. I'm speaking about Bachelet, Ricardo Lagos, that they rule the country, but in the same way. Well, not in the same way, I would say. I have to change this, but ruling the country under the same framework,
Yeah.
social inequality. People, when retired, starve to death. Literally, it's amazing. No hospitals, social preventions is very reduced, and the difference between classes is something amazing, amazing in Chile. So I think you have a problem, and well, we shouldn't leave out Argentina of what's going on today. Yeah, a very big movement that has very many problems because of what happened with Macri. There is another good chapter in the book showing what Macri did and how the external debt increased even more and left less space in economic policy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jorge.
I would like to add that the political issue is a big problem because we are talking about two different ideologies of development. No, we have in one side the neoliberal promises that with financial movement we can get the development, but we now see that it was wrong. No, we in this since the 90s we have the neoliberal movement. It has not been able to produce growth. Instead of that, we have a dynamic process of the industrialization and primarization of the region. And this is the problem because we get only a stagnant growth of income and a decreasing tendency of growth of rate of investment. And this is the big problem with our region. No, and this is why we have to think about which is the better strategy of development that we have undertake. Well, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Now, Noemi and Jorge, you both have mentioned the second wave of globalization. What are the characteristics? How do you define this one, and especially relative to the first one? What makes this wave different?
Well, historically, the first wave of globalization took place at the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century, and its crisis moment, if I may call it like that, was the 1929 financial crisis. In the 70s, the with the uprising of the new rich, which we call in Mexico, there was this revolution. Well, your colleague John Smith in Colis calls them the revolution of the rentiers revolution. They started to take power, and the global arena was changed with the demonetization of gold. Capital movements started to move all around the globe. And for the first time in history, developing country or emerging country, particularly Latin America, not only globalized, not only uh, imported capital, but for the first time exported capital. So Latin America, I would say there's three countries that are leading this movement in the region, which is Chile, obviously, Brazil, and Mexico. Started to develop multinationals, which are medium sized but still multinational, that they started to export capital not only to emerging countries within the region, but also to developed countries. So this changed the economic structure of the region. I would say that it changed the economic structure not only from the region, but uh, at the capitalist level. And what we got this global change that Latin America entered in the very low level, and its advantages were very low labor costs and raw materials. This is the first issue. Then we started to develop with the foreign capital movement. The capital account of the balance of payment was opened, and foreign capital entered, and there was no development of the uh, private capital markets, auctions, and so forth, only the bond market, which limited very much the development of financial market. Another important issue in terms of Latin America, that it went back to an export-led model. And either it was raw materials or it was the maquila industry production, which meant we went into the industry, exported, manufactured, even high-tech manufacture, but in our economies, it meant only assembling parts with very low wages. That actually has been shown that has reduced the cost of the multinational. So there is a very important issue in terms of big corporations, very small and feeble financial market, and an extremely high inequality because the state had to withdraw from economic activities and reduce social services, which led to enormous poverty. Let me tell you that in Mexico, half of the population is living below below poverty line, and about 30%, perhaps you, Jorge, have the better the figures, is below extreme poverty. This is a problem.
Yeah.
And well, I leave Jorge to add
something more related to that. I want to say that even with the capital inflows in the region, the financial sector doesn't develop with that we the neoliberal promises. This is because the big firms or big corps, transnational and domestical, are not linked to it. The firms have developed a profit strategy that is related to the overcapitalization logic, what Topolsky says about it. And this is the sense in this sense, they are growing through using mergers and acquisitions. No, that is a strategic that is related with financial movements that have a negative impacts on investment and on distribution of income, because the big corps, yeah, domestic and transnational, are growing by increasing concentration of capital. From a Marxist point of view, if you want to, to think about it, and uh, and for this strategy of overcapitalization, they are using the external financial sector, not the domestic one, and this is the big problem. And the domestic one is working with the government bonds that are making that is a source of financial profit for capital inflows, and this is the big problem, because we don't have financial development. No, this I don't know what to say, but it's related with Noemi are saying. No.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Let's jump to a description of the book. It has three parts. Can you both please talk about the parts of the book and also maybe say a few things about some of the contributions?
Okay, let me only find the index to be sure that I'm
Yeah.
not skipping nothing. 1 second. And as you know, the book is in 3 parts.
Yeah.
And wait, it doesn't come. Sorry. Here it goes. Yeah, here it goes. Wait. Okay. Well, the book has 3 parts: post crisis new capital development movement trend, secondly, non financial corporation and economic growth, thirdly, capital movement and economic patterns, and this is composed by 14 chapters. Let me describe the first part. And what about Jorge? You doing the second one, okay?
Okay.
So here we have 4 chapters which are quite interesting, since uh, the first one by Gary Dimsky and Nicole Serpa-Bielma is Financial Geography and Social Reality, a spatial or real space analysis of financial crisis. It starts from Minsky financial crisis and said, okay, it's important for crisis to introduce time. This is a very important element in whole the heterodox stream of thought. But it's not enough. We need space, because the social relations are different in developed, developing, and even emerging economies. So in this sense, it shapes economic theory in another view. In this sense, Toporowski writes the transmission mechanisms of financial crisis to developing countries, and asks the question why global financial crisis wasn't global. And here is an interesting linking from the first chapter, that in developing countries we didn't have a financial crisis because the transmission mechanisms were different. The monetary mechanism prevented that in our economies it will be unleashed a financial crisis. So it's another important issue. Then we go to a very interesting paper of Hanna Zimbrowska about foreign domestic investment, inequality and macroeconomic stability on the eve of the COVID-19 crisis, and she intends to link FDI with income inequality. And although we see that income inequality is increasing, she doesn't find the econometric link. I would argue that this is because she's looking income inequality at a country level and not a regional level, which will make, I suppose, another result, but this is also it needs to be discussed further. Then we have the issue of pension funds and domestic debt markets in emerging economies by Jennifer Churchill, Bruno Bonizzi, and Anina Kaltenbrunner. And they argue that pension funds in Latin America hasn't been able to deep and broaden the financial market and give some more financial stability because of the link of this institution with financial centers. So it's another difference between developing and developed countries. And Mimosa Shabani makes an interesting analysis about how banks, multinational banks, work in developed and developing economy, and he shows that independently of the different financial strategies of emerging economies, i.e., the different countries in Latin America, there is a unique feature of the transferences from the Latin American matrix to the home matrix. So there is a lot of money going out from our countries. Finally, our paper, Jorge and mine, which the unique development of financial cooperation in Latin America, where we show that Latin American corporation use the external bond market to get indebted in order to increase financial gains rather than look rather than invest. And there is very weak linkages with the matrix, which are in Latin American country, are in the other economies. So the movement of this big corporation outwards, it's mainly to get into the financial centers rather than support the multinational as a whole. I will leave it to this. Please, Jorge, if you may continue with the other second part.
The second part focuses on not financial cooperation and economic growth, and contains 4 chapters. The first one is called capital flows and the role of non-financial corporation and their microeconomic implications. It's an analysis of Chile. Is made by Esteban Perez Caldentey and Nicole Fabreau. They argue in the same logic that the big corporations are issuing bonds in the international markets to get resources to grow in the external, to expand their operation in the external markets. And this is one of the characteristics of the second wave of financial globalization after the 2008 crisis. This is they are proving that these resources that they are getting from international bond market are not a source of finance to the real activity. No? Then we have another paper that is related to this problem. The second one of this section is called foreign direct investment in the Mexican steel industry. It is made by Samuel Ortiz Velázquez, and in this paper he discusses the foreign investment determinants in the Mexican steel industry, and he shows that this capital movement produces an increasing concentration of industry. No? The following chapter is made by Jimena Echenique Romero, and is called Excess of International Liquidity and Corporate Financing Mexico, Reflection from USA Monetary Policy and Quantitative Easing. And she shows that with the quantitative easing policy, the structure of financing in the corporation in Mexico changes because they use the 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 external financial markets to get liquidity, and this is related with another chapters that we are we have in this book. The last chapter of this section is made by Marcelo Varela and Gustavo Adrián Salazar, and it's called for Foreign Direct Investment in Latin America, Effects on Growth and Development. Bueno, well, these authors examine or proves that if, the effectiveness of of foreign direct investment on economic growth and development in Latin America between the 90s and the 20s. They conclude that direct foreign investment contributes positively to the economic growth, but foreign direct investment doesn't have a positive effects on human development. And the next is the final section. Maybe you can give this.
Noemi,
Okay.
you want to speak on the third part?
Okay, very quickly. It contains again 4 chapters which deal from a much more broader view the effects of capital movement in Latin America. It has more a sociological and political view. In this sense, Juan Pablo Panseira and Alexis Salutian, Latin America International Integration and Global Value Change, what have changed after the 2008 global financial crisis. This is a very interesting question of what were the effects of the 2008 global financial crisis in developed and developing economies again. And they found out that in developed economy, a much more nationalistic movement took over in order to shut the borders and develop on a nationalistic base the economy, sorry. In this sense, and they argue that in developing countries was exactly the reverse. They opened much more. In this sense, what we can resemble out of this is Trump with American First, and Latin America open even more to external capital. So this is a very interesting chapter in terms of the different effects in both types of economy. And then we have from Argentina a chapter written by Cecilia Yamani, Pablo Bortz, and Alan Sibbles, From Downpour of Investment to Debt Crisis, the Case of Argentina 2015-2019. And it analyzes the period of Macri that did everything opposing the Kirchner and Cristina's government intends to open the economy, and the results were quite known for Latin America, and perhaps not for them, yeah, that a big wave of disindustrialization took place with enormous debt, not strengthening the productive investment. Either it weakened all the productive structure. And then we have a chapter from Colombia written by Gonzalo Convita Mora and Álvaro Martín Romero Rivas, the hegemony of big corporation and the internationalization of capital, a stagnation model with restricted democracy. It's very interesting how they show, based on John Robinson, an analysis of how foreign corporations not only used very cheap labor, but also pushed the frontiers of peasantries and expanded their territory, even based on all this black economy linked to drugs, and they use it in terms to increase their power. It's very interesting how all the issue of strength, force, military enters into the scene used by international cooperation backed by the state. And finally, you have another chapter on Peru, extractive capitalism's translational miners and the Andean peasants in Peru by Alejandro Garay Guaman, that writes how the uh, how the extraction of surplus in Peru is going to the more brutal ways of not on relative surplus but on absolute surplus in terms of pushing all the Indian culture uh, and increasing the strength of big capital. So here we have three countries, Brazil, um, Colombia, and Peru, which today are in a big struggle, social movement. Brazil and Argentina, which had its going back the clock in terms of Fernandez getting the power against the very neoliberals, showing the social impacts of foreign capital. So it's based on a country analysis, which give a lots of insight, not strictly economic, but also these social political issues that are linked to big capital movements.
Well, thank you. I'm just going to ask you one last question. Is there still work to be done on this topic? Could there be a second book? Could there be like what's left to study?
Could you be more specific about it? Could you be more specific about? Yeah.
Yeah. So you just came out with this book on capital movements, corporate dominance. Um, is there still lots of work to be done? What
Yes.
what would you have liked to incorporate in this book? And maybe that could be a second book.
Income inequality.
Mm.
It's key. Another issue that I would like very much to develop is how economic policy can unfold in this type of structure and what's needed to be done. Just this morning before entering this session, I was reading a piece of Peter Boffinger saying Europe needs more fiscal policy. If Europe needs more fiscal policy, what about Latin America?
Mm.
So here we have a very interesting issue on monetary policy, which you are becoming an expert, Louis-Philippe. There is another issue that we need to analyze. How external capital diminishes central banks' force to finance economic growth. There is no doubt, I think, today that we need another economic policy with another view of the central bank. And we're not even calling for stopping central bank autonomy. I think it can be done within it. Anyhow, this is for discussion. So I will recapitulate income inequality, economic policy, monetary and fiscal policy, and perhaps discuss how this crisis will change globalization in Latin America. I am the one that thinks that globalization came in the capitalist system for good. We cannot do without it, but there is a need for another type of globalization.
You're
And I
talking about possible structural changes
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, I think, well,
brought about.
we're looking at it now. Global value change have changed in Latin America with
Yeah.
this crisis. There's no doubt about it. But we need to know what is the stand that will take Latin America, and whether we do this old social movement, even with the new deal, with the new free trade deal with the US and Canada, yeah, which they call for to increase wages, yeah, how it would articulate. I think this sanitary crisis will change the structure of capitalism, and we want to see how capital movement in the future will move. I think these are three challenges that we need to cope.
And
Okay.
we have to think deep into the maybe the government strategies to developing um, a industrial policy in this context, no, because this is where this is what is Latin American is lack of, you know. We don't have an industrial policy, a smart industrial policy. Um, this is a big issue that we will look deep into in next works.
Yeah, I hope there will be a follow-up to this book. I think these are interesting questions that need more research, and especially if you're thinking about uh, structural changes brought upon by this crisis. There, yeah, I mean, I can, see the title, Financial Crises and Structural Change in Latin America. And
Good title, thanks.
I think that would be a great book. On that note, we're going to end this. Thank you very much, both of you, for taking the time this morning to speak with me. And as always, we'll be in touch.
Thank you to
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.